How's it going back here? Hi, Randy. Where are you?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon again. We want to thank each and every one of you for your patience and welcome you to part 2 of our opportunity to meet, greet, and learn about one of 4 finalists for the position of Chancellor for the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. In a moment, we will meet and hear from Dr. Anthony Graham. I'm Kim Jones-Sneed, and I bring you greetings from the UAPB Office of Communications, Institutional Advancement, and I will be facilitating today's session. We want to thank those of you that braved this cold weather to be with us in person, and we appreciate each of you that are logged on online on YouTube, and thank you so much. And so on that note, we want to say to each of you to please silence your phones, as our audience was able to pick up a little bit of sound yesterday. So we want to ask you to silence your phones, put them on mute, and we do thank you so much for your cooperation. We want to take time to acknowledge any of our elected officials that have taken time to join us today. We ask that you would stand at this time. Are there any federally elected officials who are with us today? Any federal elected officials? Would our state elected officials please stand? And thank you so much, and also an alumnus of UAPB. Thank you for being with us today. Do we have any city elected officials that are here at this time, the city of Pine Bluff? And are there any officials from Jefferson County, Arkansas that are here today? I do want to acknowledge the presence of our former Pine Bluff mayor, Shirley Washington, and a UAPB graduate, A&M graduate. She was here yesterday, and I don't know how I missed that gold fur they said she had on. I said, I didn't see that beautiful fur coat, but I see you today, and thank you for joining us on today. We'd like to remind you that at the end of this session, we encourage your feedback by completing a survey. The link will be found on the page for Dr. Graham. And those of you that came in, you received a QR code with Dr. Graham's photo on it, which you can scan this QR code in on your phone. It's also projecting right now on the screens. In addition, those of you that are staff and faculty on the campus of UAPB, we received a survey link via email. And they've done a great job, because even after I completed my survey, I got another email reminding me to complete the survey. If you're like me, you might want to do it right away, because it's great while it's fresh on your mind from the immediate feedback and your feelings of today's candidate. It would be great to go ahead and complete that survey immediately. There will be a question and answer opportunity or session following Dr. Graham's presentation. Today we will have microphones set up in the open aisle areas. What we will do is we will take a question from you, the audience, using the mics on the floor. And so we'll have 2 questions from the floor, one from one mic, one from the other. And then we will take a question online from our audience that's viewing today online across the country. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Caleb Williams, who is seated on the platform today. He is the president of the Student Government Association. He and his staff helped us so well yesterday. Caleb, would you come and please greet everyone and say something and recognize the Student Government Association officers that are here present. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Welcome to our part 2 of our candidate conversations with Dr. Graham here. I just want to thank all the students, the faculty and staff, as well as alumni who have come out today, as well as our viewers joining us online. We had over 200 viewers yesterday joining us online and asking different questions, so we give those viewers a round of applause. So, like I said, I'm Caleb Williams, the 103rd Student Government Association president, and I'm happy to represent the students here at the university. We just had a great conversation with Dr. Graham here, as well as great conversation with our candidates yesterday and our candidates to come. I want to make sure that the students have a voice in this candidacy. So I thank you so much for everyone coming out. Please leave with clear minds, ask lots of questions if you have questions out of the audience today. I want to recognize our Chief of Staff in the audience, the Student Government Association Chief of Staff, Chloe Brackens, as well as other officers, our sophomore class president, Cody Moore, our freshman class president, and there we go, our Miss University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, Freddie Thompson, as well as Miss Freshman. I believe that is all the student leadership. I'm sorry if I missed anybody. Back in the back here, I'm sorry. Our SGA Vice President, Ariane Wallace. So thank you so much for coming out. Like I said, leave with clear minds. Make sure you ask plenty of questions. There will be plenty of time for Q&A. Students as well ask as many questions as you have for Dr. Graham here. So thank you so much for coming out.
And now, let's get ready to meet Dr. Anthony Graham. Dr. Anthony Graham is currently a tenured professor of education and former provost and vice chancellor for academic affairs at Winston-Salem State University in North Carolina. He also served as interim chancellor at the institution from 2023 to 2024. Dr. Graham was previously a tenured full professor and dean of the College of Education at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. He attended the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where he earned a bachelor's degree in English with a minor in mathematics in 1997. He obtained a master's degree in secondary English education in 1999 and a doctorate in curriculum and teaching with a cognate in multicultural education in 2003 from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Prior to his work in higher education, Dr. Graham was a high school English teacher. He has served as the managing editor of the historic peer-reviewed academic journal entitled The Negro Educational Review, and has collaborated with educators and scholars to create initiatives that increase the number of classroom teachers, especially ethnic and racial minority teachers who enter the teaching profession in under-resourced and hard-to-staff rural and urban schools. At this time, help me welcome our next candidate for the position of Chancellor of the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, Dr. Anthony Graham.
Good afternoon. thank you so very much for the warm welcome. Thank you all so very much for being here in person. And for those of you joining us online, thank you so very much for your engagement and your participation. I want to be mindful of time, so I'm going to move expeditiously. Before I launch into my conversation, though, I want to call your attention. The QR code on the screen before you takes you to an electronic portfolio where you can learn more about me and the work that I've done in my various leadership roles, whether it's provost, dean of the School of Education, department chair, so on and so forth. There's some folders that Mr. Williams was kind enough to pass out as well, so some of you might have those folders in your possession. I encourage you to please visit that electronic portfolio and learn more about who I am and what I do and have done. So let me move very quickly into the topic at hand here, and I've been asked to talk about the role of our public 1890 land-grant institutions in modern education. More specifically, I was asked to address the prompt that you see before you on the screen. I won't read this prompt to you, but really the conversation is going to focus on what does it take to ensure that our 1890s thrive and survive moving forward, given the current landscape in which we find ourselves. So my conversation with you this afternoon will focus on a number of areas. First, I'm going to spend just a quick moment, no more than 5 to 7 minutes, talking to you about who I am. And it's important for you to know who I am, because who I am really guides the way in which I do the work that I do and the way in which that I collaborate and include others in this work. Then I'm going to talk to you about the Moral Act of 1890 that commissioned the establishment of these 1890 land-grant institutions as a second act to the 1862 Moral Act. But I want to talk about this Moral Act from the perspective of then and now, and you'll understand what I mean by that in a few moments. Then we're going to talk about the key factors necessary for these institutions to thrive and the type of work that I've done relative to these factors. And then I'll pause so we can engage in a conversation so you can learn more about me. I can hear the questions and inquiries that you have, but also I can learn more about you and you can address the inquiries that I may have. So let me very quickly talk to you about who I am as a person-centered servant leader. And I will begin by sharing, and I've said this throughout the day, I'm the son of a Baptist pastor. So I always begin our conversations by grounding things in text. So the text that I'm going to use to ground the conversation this afternoon comes from one of my favorite passages from Theodore Roosevelt called The Man in the Arena, a speech that he gave April 23rd, 1910. And within this speech, Theodore Roosevelt says the following: "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or how the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows at the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." The reason this quote resonates and speaks to who I am is because it is about being in the arena doing the work. A lot of people will stand on the sidelines and criticize the people in the arena doing the work. I always say that the easiest job that there is that of the critic, because you wait for someone to act and then you respond to it. I don't privilege the critic. I concern myself with the people who are willing to get in the arena and do the work, understanding that it's better to take action than to do nothing at all. And even if we fail, we try to do something to address the issue. That's who I am as a servant leader. I've done a great deal over my 25 years in higher education, but I always tell people on the slide that you see before you, the bullet point that means the most is that fifth bullet point. I was a high school teacher. Being a teacher taught me a lot about what it means to be a professional, and I developed skills that have carried me through to where I am today. So being a teacher, these core values of trust, excellence, accountability, continuous improvement, honesty, equity, respect, these values drive who I am, how I lead, how I work with people, and what I do on a daily basis. And I am maniacal about student success. I'm maniacal, as I talked with the students before I came in moments ago. I'm maniacal about making certain that we create the environment for our students to have a phenomenal experience and to ensure that they succeed. Part of the reason that I'm maniacal about it is because of my own personal experience as a student. During my K-12 experience, I was not a great student. You will see on the overhead before you that I was suspended quite a bit. And ultimately, I was identified as a student with a learning disability, special needs. And I was tracked as such from 3rd grade to the 8th grade until I met Mrs. King, my 8th grade language arts teacher, who challenged me and had me think about education differently. She moved me from a low-performing language arts class to a high-performing language arts class, her advanced language arts class, and I began to see the world differently by way of education. But I never really challenged myself. I was always that student in the middle because I figured out early on that people pay attention to the students who are struggling and people pay attention to the students who are high achieving. If you're in the middle, nobody thinks about you. So I did just enough to get by so nobody would ever bother me. Unfortunately, that would come back to haunt me when I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill as an undergraduate. I got there, majored in computer science, and didn't understand how the university worked. My mother had a 10th grade education, dropped out of high school in the 10th grade, raising 5 of us at home by herself, working at Albany Shirt Factory. The most she ever made was $4.25 per hour. I know that to be true because I did her taxes for my 10th grade year until she died. Making about $13,000 a year, but investing in us. But I did just enough to get by. So when I'm at UNC Chapel Hill and I don't understand how this university works and I'm not asking people for help and I'm struggling. But I'm saying to myself, figure it out on your own, because that's what a man would do. Figure it out on his own. Unfortunately, I had to learn a very hard lesson, and what you see on the screen before you is my transcript at the conclusion of my junior year in spring of 1996. And I want to call your attention to 2 things. Number 1, the cumulative GPA of a 1.892 and the academic ineligibility. I received a letter from the registrar's office May 7th telling me I was no longer a student at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I needed to remove all my personal effects from the campus. I was no longer welcome there. I walked around that campus with that letter in my hand the entire day that Friday, trying to find someone to help me, and no one would until I ran into this black man who I'd never seen before wearing a suit. I put the letter in front of him. He read it. He said at 1:30 that afternoon, I was on my way to lunch, but it appears to me you need some help. Let's go to my office. And he sat me down, the first person on that campus to sit me down and have a conversation about me and my challenges and what I needed to do to rectify the issues. I had no idea who this man was. We sat in that office for an hour, and he left to go make some copies, and I started looking around the office, and I found out sitting there, I saw his name, Dr. Harold Woodard. He was the director of academic advising at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. It was meant for me to stumble into him that day. So because of a Mrs. King, and because of my mother, and because of a dean, Dr. Harold Woodard, I am obligated to ensure that student success is always at the forefront of what we do. For every door that you close in someone's face, you may be pushing them away. If you keep your door open and invite people in, you might be talking to the next provost of a university. You never know. Invest the time in each person. So when we talk about my leadership style, I am a servant leader. I believe in expectations and accountability. And what we do, what I do, is driven by data. It's nice to know what you feel and think, but I need to know what data substantiates what you're saying. And in this space, I am collaborative, but I am highly competitive. I hate to lose. I can't stand losing. I hate to see Winston-Salem State University by alphabetical at the end of a list. I don't like that. I believe in this spirit of excellence. If you're going to do it well and do it right. That's the way that I operate. So I'm unapologetically focused on excellence. Good is not good enough. Great is not good enough. I want sustained excellence. And Will Foster says that excellence is never an accident. It is the result of high intention, sincere effort, intelligent direction, skillful execution, and the vision to see obstacles as opportunities. It is imperative that we stop having a deficit mindset and complaining about the obstacles and ask ourselves, how do we reframe those obstacles and say these are opportunities if we lean into them? That's the way I operate. That's the way I see the world. So let's talk about the role and purpose of the public 1890 land grant, then and now. So the second Morrill Act, as we know, was penned in 1890. And this Morrill Act really is the result of the separate but equal doctrine that was in place at the time. The initial Morrill Act of 1862 created essentially land grant institutions that are predominantly white institutions that people of color were not welcomed into. So in 1890, the second Morrill Act created these 19 land grant institutions that are historically black colleges and universities. But the premise of the Morrill Act really focused on 4 pillars. Number 1, access to higher education, ensuring that people of color, black people specifically, had an opportunity to have access to higher education. Number 2, teaching agricultural and technical education. Number 3, ensuring that research and extension was a part of what we did on these campuses because we wanted to focus on pillar number 4, community development. These are the pillars of the Morrill Act of 1890 as it was articulated then. Those pillars still hold true today. But there's a little bit more nuance to these pillars in 2025 and looking futuristically. Access to higher education is still true today, but it's a little bit more nuanced. We're talking about access, affordability, and student success. Teaching agriculture and technical education, yes, that's still the core of our HBCU land grants, but we teach more than agricultural and technical education. But what's more important than what we teach is that there's evidence of learning occurring and that there's a return on the investment. Research and extension still applies, but now we have to think about innovation and entrepreneurship. It's not just about research and extension. How do we convert these things into revenue-generating opportunities? Community development still applies, but it's really more about community, workforce, and economic development. So it's in these spaces where we have to have conversations about what does it mean to be in 1890 in today's landscape around these particular concepts. I'm going to come back to these in just a moment. But before I do so, I want to talk about the challenges facing our 1890s. And I'm going to take it from a funnel approach and think about higher education writ large and work our way down into the HBCU space. So a reality for all of our institutions of higher education, irrespective of HBCU, predominantly white institution, so on and so forth, declining enrollments. I'm sure we've been having conversations on this campus about the demographic cliff that we're facing with respect to our student demography. Our traditional 18-year-old population, who would normally be the crux of what we do in our institutions of higher education, drying up. So if we're building our enrollment singularly and solely on 18-year-olds, we're setting our institutions up to struggle. We also know that many of our black students are choosing other institution types. HBCUs are not the only game in town anymore. So as the market share has shifted, we have to think about what that means for the future vitality of our historically black colleges and universities. Another reality, thinking about those traditional 18-year-olds, this was a research study conducted that showed us that a lot of 18-year-olds and their parents are actually looking for alternative options. They're not excited by the 4-year collegiate experience. They're not excited by paying money, thousands of dollars, to earn a degree that may, from their vantage point, have little return on investment. And if this isn't enough, some of our corporate entities are saying, well, if the 4-year institutions aren't doing a great enough job preparing people for the workforce, we'll do it. You have places like Google and Microsoft who are now offering micro-credentials over the course of 8 months or 12 months, saying that we can do this quicker, more efficiently, more effective, at a fraction of the cost. High school graduate, come to us. We'll prepare you for our industry much better than those 4-year institutions can. And parents and students are buying into that narrative, saying that perhaps the 4-year experience is not for me. Another reality of higher education, and perhaps you saw this last night or this morning, the USDA suspends its scholarship program for historically black colleges and universities. And last week, I received from the Department of Education a notice. I'm the principal investigator on 3 grants from the Department of Education. All of them are focused on diversifying the K-12 teacher workforce. I received a notification saying, we're shutting down your grant immediately. On each of those grants, I've hired people, staff. I had to let those people know we're going to have to separate from you. In each of those grants, we're paying for students to earn their degrees, whether it's a baccalaureate degree or a master's degree. After this semester, we won't be able to sustain that using those grant dollars. This is highly problematic for all of our institutions, but specifically our minority-serving institutions, more explicitly our historically black colleges and universities, because we leverage these resources to diversify the various disciplines that exist. Diversifying STEM professions, diversifying agricultural professions, diversifying education, healthcare. The federal government is now saying we are not funding resources in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which threatens the very existence of the work we do at our HBCUs, particularly our land-grant HBCUs. Another reality for our 1890s, and you all are familiar with this, one of the whole premises of a land-grant institution is that the federal government provides our land-grant institutions an allotment of funding every year, and then the state matches that allotment 1-to-1. So if the federal government provides you $23 million, the state is expected to match it $23 million, providing every institution that amount so that we can engage in research, extension, quality teaching, and so forth. Well, you all know that in many of the states across these United States, our historically black colleges and universities have not received the 1-to-1 match from their states. As you will see on the overhead before you, just from 1987 to 2020, $12.8 billion in funding that these institutions have been owed have not come to fruition. What could be done if these 19 historically black colleges and universities got the money owed them? How many scholarships could be awarded? What types of research infrastructure could be built? So on and so forth. And we also know that our endowments look completely different from the 1862 endowments at those institutions. Those institutions at the flagships have endowments that are 70 times larger than what we have at our public land-grant institutions. So these are the challenges, and I can keep going on and on and on and on. But Will Foster said to us in this quote, "We have to have the ability to see obstacles as opportunities." And these are spaces where we have opportunities. We can't keep complaining about them. We have to figure out how do we reframe, revision, and lean into these spaces so that we can benefit and maximize the institution. So there must be an intentional focus here on access, affordability, and student success. And what I mean by that is there must be an institutional, communal focus on student enrollment growth, student retention, and four-year completion. These are the outcomes that people are paying attention to, if you will. So we must commit to grow the institution from an enrollment standpoint. We must find ways to ensure that we are diversifying our student body so the enrollment is growing. And as we grow the enrollment, we must also commit to ensure that we're increasing our retention rate. At present, our retention rate, our first to second year retention rate, is 65%. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. That means 35% of the students who come here, we're losing. We should not lose a student. So we must make certain we're paying attention to retention, and we must diversify revenue at the institution so that we have the financial resources that will support the retention and recruitment of students. So what are the types of things that we could be doing, should be doing? Number one, how do we diversify the student demography? Based on the data that I saw in our IPEDS data, at present we have 90% black students, 3% Hispanic, 3% white. How do we think about the student demography differently without sacrificing who we are as a historically black college and university? How do we think about recruiting different populations? The traditional 18-year-old is still going to be the primary focus, but how do we create the environment to attract, recruit, and enroll community college transfer students, students who are adult learners, students who are readmits, meaning they stopped at some moment in time but they were in good academic standing? Are we reaching out to those students and bringing them back? How do we diversify our student demography? What types of funds do we have in place that can help support those students coming back to the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff? And as we have different student types on the campus, how are we ensuring that we're not treating our students in a monolithic way? All freshmen are not just freshmen. We have students who are males, females, from rural areas, from urban areas, in-state, out-of-state, Pell recipient, first generation, second generation. We can't treat them all the same, which then means that our resources must be differentiated to meet the students where they are. That is the nature of equity. We must meet students where they are, provide them the resources necessary so that they can get the outcome that we have in place, which is a four-year degree. How do we use our calendar in a different way? Maybe 16 weeks for a semester doesn't work for everyone. Maybe we need to have 8 weeks of courses for certain groups of students in certain academic disciplines. Are we using the time between winter break and the spring semester to provide opportunities for students to take courses? Are we using time between the spring semester and the summer session for students to take courses? How are we using the summer session? We need to ensure that we're structuring the experience and the calendar differently so students have opportunities to either graduate early, graduate on time. Those things are important. And then how are we thinking about the revenue that we're generating? I will tell you one of the things that I learned at Winston-Salem State University, and it's an inherent tension being an HBCU. We do a lot of hookups. There's an entity, an organization in the community that says, I would love to use your facility. Can you give it to me for free? Well, if I give it to you for free, then the dollars that I could be generating that I could use for scholarships for students, we're not getting those dollars. Or maybe I won't do it for free, but I give it to you for a reduced cost. Normally it's $500, but we're going to do it for $150 for you. Well, that's $350 that we could have used for textbook scholarships for a student on this campus. So there is a fine line between working with community, building bonds and alliance with community, but also making certain that we don't sacrifice the core of what we do here, which is student success. So my experiences are all about ensuring that we're thinking about student success, that we are growing the enrollment, that we are retaining students, that we are generating funds to support student growth and development. At Winston-Salem State University, we grew the enrollment to 5,226 students before COVID, from about 5,000 students. Did it in a very short period of time, but we did so because we thought about recruiting different types of students. We were very much a traditional 18-year-old residential campus. We had to diversify who we were recruiting to the campus. We also brought back our graduate school. In 2013, the university administration shut down the graduate school, and we saw graduate enrollment tank. We brought back the graduate school, hired a graduate dean, and every year since 2021, we have seen historic enrollment growth year over year in our graduate programs. I am very committed to graduate programs because those graduate programs allow you to enter C-suites and make conversations and decisions that can impact the work that we do here. Positioning people with that advanced education is critically important. Partnering with corporations, partnering with business and the corporate sector, doing things to ensure that we are creating opportunities for our students to graduate in 4 years. Very intentional focus on access, affordability, student success. But we also must pay attention to teaching, the application of knowledge or the evidence of learning, and return on investment. This is ensuring that we have quality educators who are committed to developing our students as critical thinkers and problem solvers. To do so, we've got to make certain that we're retaining quality faculty and staff, but we're also recruiting new faculty and staff who are committed to creating the experience that will help position our students for 4-year completion. Making certain that our faculty have the ability to teach an ever-evolving student body. One thing that I learned, and it hit me like a ton of bricks, I didn't realize it until I got into higher education. I always thought that my professors knew how to teach. Then over time I learned most professors have never been taught how to teach. If I'm a biology professor, I likely got my undergraduate in biology, my master's in biology, and my PhD in biology. At what point did anybody ever teach me how to teach biology? More importantly, at what point did anybody teach me how to teach biology with 100 people in an auditorium? And of those 100 people, 50% are 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20% are 40 and above, 10% are community college transfers. So I'm standing in a classroom doing pedagogy when I need to be paying attention to andragogy. Did anybody ever teach me how to do any of that? Did anybody ever teach me how to assess and evaluate? Some professors still do that old school. We're going to give you 4 tests in the course of a semester, 25% each. But if you fail one, you almost failed the class. As opposed to saying, maybe I need to diversify the way I assess student learning. Instead of having 4 assessments, 25% each, maybe I have 4 tests that total 60%, and with the remaining 40%, we're going to do something to figure out, do you understand what we're talking about and what we're learning throughout the course of the semester, giving you the opportunity to succeed in my class. But at what point does anyone teach you how to do that? And then that return on investment. Once I graduate from your institution, I have my degree in political science. At what point can I expect to see a break-even point. If I invested $50,000 to earn this degree, at what point post-graduation, once I'm in my career, would I expect to see it break even? I'm recouping that $50,000, and then I'm going to begin to generate revenue. These are the types of things that we've done in the state of North Carolina at Winston-Salem State University to ensure that we're paying attention to these things. So how are we going about creating an ecosystem of academic excellence? Well, the first thing I will say to you before I get into anything on this slide is we must first adopt the mantra that we are interested in an ecosystem, not an ego system. So very often we're more concerned about what's convenient for me and my personal agenda, and we forget about the very reason we're here, the students. We have to move ourselves out of the way to think about what the students need. So it is about being committed to an ecosystem, not an ego system. And then we can begin to unpack these pieces, recruitment and retention, using startup funding to recruit talented faculty to the institution, but also figuring out how to create grants on the campus for existing faculty so that they too have opportunities to engage in upskilling their teaching skills or engaging in research. Paying attention to salary compression, market labor adjustments, figuring out how we might be able to very creatively adjust compensation, understanding that there may not be new resources from the state, from the legislature. So how do we do that internally? That's the work that we've done. How do we put in place faculty research leaves so that you can have a semester to invest in your research, which hopefully will generate opportunity for the institution and for you professionally. Ensuring that our degree programs are significant, relevant, and timely. We call it CERT. If we're teaching people in our courses in a degree program and they can't use that degree program upon graduation in a meaningful way, we have robbed them. So we have to make certain that we are paying attention to our academic degree programs and what's occurring in those spaces. So bringing experts to serve on advisory boards, opening up our departments, and asking these individuals, take a look at our curriculum and tell us whether or not it's significant, relevant, and timely for today and where we're going. And if it's not, what can we do? What should we do to update it and modernize it? Because if we don't do that, we're setting ourselves up for extinction. Investing in teaching, making certain that our faculty are in an ongoing space of learning how to teach, how to assess, how to evaluate, how to bring into the classroom technology, artificial intelligence. I had this conversation with someone right before the Christmas break. Faculty member said to me, Graham, I'm tired of these students using ChatGPT to write their essays. I said, well, Doc, ChatGPT's not going anywhere. So we need to think about the assignments you're given differently. So I said, have you ever thought about, instead of asking the student to write an essay, ask them to use ChatGPT to generate the essay, and then ask them to analyze that essay to find factual errors based on what you've been teaching in the classroom and what you would do to change that essay so that it's more well-grounded in the information in your discipline. He said, well, Provost, no, I ain't never thought about that before. I said, that's why we're here, son. We've got to think about what we do differently. We can't keep doing what we... I used to have a professor when I was at North Carolina A&T in the School of Education. He had been working there since Tom came in 1983. And his notes were laminated. And this is in 2010, 2011. I said, Tom, things change. You can't have laminated notes. You got to evolve with the time. Having what we call the integration of HIPS, high impact practices. You can teach all day, but are people learning? I tell people all day, I can stand in front of you all day, I can teach all day, I can talk all day, I can do some professorial stuff all day, but will you learn from what I'm saying? And the high impact practices ensures that our students are applying what they're learning. So those internship and co-op experiences, engaged in research, engaged in study abroad and study away. These are the types of things that help develop the skill sets of our students, the competencies of our students, and then that return on investment. Embedding within our curriculum micro-credentials, certificates, things that are applicable to the workforce, irrespective of academic discipline. These are the things that are important to create an ecosystem of academic excellence. These are the types of things that I've been doing my entire career in leadership. One of the things that you'll find in the electronic portfolio is created a faculty for the future framework. Thinking about the mission of the institution, the vision of the institution, and where we're trying to go strategically, and ensuring that we come up with a framework of recruitment and employment for new faculty who will add to where we're trying to go. So instead of people just kind of doing willy-nilly hiring, they're strategic hiring against the framework that's in place. Making certain that we're paying attention to salary compression and market adjustment issues. Updating curriculum and integrating internships. These are the types of things that I've been doing as provost and things that I did as dean and department chair. We also, at the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, must have a laser-like focus on research, extension, and entrepreneurship. Making certain that we're paying attention to how we support scholars and how we produce new knowledge that improves society and creates opportunity for revenue. Those competitive grants, federal agencies and foundations, maximizing the dollars that we're receiving from the USDA, leveraging corporate relationships and public-private partnerships. These things are important to ensure that we are moving the institution as an 1890 land grant. One of the things that we did at Winston-Salem State University, it took me a little while to convince Chancellor Robinson to go in this direction. When I say Chancellor Robinson, I believe we can move Winston-Salem State University to a Research 2 institution. But that means we have to invest a certain amount of money every year in our research apparatus and our research infrastructure, and we need to begin to position ourselves to bring research doctorates to the campus. But with that status of R2, we can begin to enter in different spaces and have conversations in a different way that will afford us more resources for our faculty, our staff, and our students. That's the type of work that we must do here at UAPB. We've got to move the institution from our NSF HERD ranking of 391 out of 914 as a land-grant institution. Winston-Salem State University is a liberal arts institution. When I got here in 2018, we were ranked in the 600s in the NSF HERD ranking. We are now ranked 377. A land-grant institution should always be ahead of a liberal arts institution in these rankings. So right now, our institution is ahead of Arkansas Pine Bluff. That should never happen, not as a land grant. But we've got to accept that as a challenge and lean into it as an opportunity. And we got to be competitive. Got to be competitive. My leadership experiences are all about these types of opportunities. Yes, sir. 5 minutes. Thank you. So when I arrived at Winston-Salem State University, our total portfolio of research was $28 million. We've moved it by 217%, and we have retrieved 117% overhead recovery, meaning we are taking money off the grant dollars we're getting and reinvesting it into the campus, which allows us to give bonuses, hire graduate students and undergraduate students to help with research and so forth, build out offices, so on and so forth. So our average investment has grown in our research space to about $9.2 million per year. And we're working very closely with partners like Adobe, Nationwide, Diageo, ensuring that we're investing in our student success. And the final thing that I'll share with you, our community and economic development is at the forefront of what we do. Wanting to make certain that we are bringing the community to the university and the university into the community. Very much an institutional commitment to impacting social and economic mobility of our students and of the community. Creating STEM pipelines, making certain that we're impacting economic outcomes, having an annual legislative agenda that's in the best interest of the community and the region, partnering, working closely with the alumni, working closely with the foundation, working closely with elected officials, thinking about health and wellness, urban and rural revitalization, housing, low-income housing, so on and so forth, stepping into the space. This is what we've done at Winston-Salem State University. These are the types of things that I've led and been a part of at Winston-Salem State University. Making certain that we're paying attention to that alliance between the institution and the community. So in order for the institution to thrive and strive moving forward, not just Pine Bluff, but all of our 1890 land-grant institutions, you must have leadership that's visionary and person-focused. You must have leadership that promotes excellence and will not stand for anything less than that. You must have leadership that emphasizes accountability. You must have leadership that has a relentless commitment to student success. You must have leadership that's inclusive, collaborative, and works to build allyships. You must have leadership that's a servant leader and is committed to being a leader learner, understanding that you never arrive. You have to continue to work and improve. Now, I can't tell you what that leader looks like, but when I see that, I have a vision that comes to mind. So I'll end right where I began. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how strong the man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms to great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be among those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. I am a servant leader who steps boldly, courageously, and unapologetically into the arena. And I encourage and ask you to step into that arena with me. Whether I'm here as chancellor, or I'm still in Winston-Salem, or wherever I may be, our community of HBCUs must thrive and survive for another 150 plus years. That is my challenge for each and every one of us sitting in this room and everyone within the sound of my voice listening online. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Yes, we're going to go to Q&A. Make sure they know we're about to go to Q&A.
Let's give Dr. Graham another big hand. And now we're going to prepare for our Q&A, give you an opportunity to ask questions. And while we are preparing for that opportunity, I failed to acknowledge a former provost who has led us to this present day, to this hour, and that is Interim Chancellor Dr. Andrea Stewart, UAPB Interim Chancellor. I did want to acknowledge her, even though I don't believe I see her, but I do want to acknowledge her and recognize her, as well as all of our faculty and our staff, and the search committee that's had the hard job of bringing us to the point of having 4 finalists, led by Mr. Perry Stuckey, and also any other members of the search committee. Would you stand at this time and be recognized? And thank you for your service. All right, we're going to prepare for our question and answer, and we will bring back Dr. Graham to, of course, answer and address those questions at this time.
Hey, Dr. Graham. Jermaine Ramos. I work in student involvement and leadership under the umbrella of student affairs. My question to you is, student involvement and leadership, we play a vital but critical role in shaping the campus culture, and ensuring the success of not only our community, but our students. So my question to you is, how do you plan to prioritize and foster student leadership development, and what are some things that you are committed to as far as student engagement?
Excellent question, and thank you for being here this afternoon. Student development by way of leadership is a necessity. At Winston-Salem State University, we created what we call power skills. And this language actually came to us in conversation with some of our business and corporate partners as we were thinking about how do we ensure that when our students leave this institution, that they have the skills and competencies to be ready on day one of whatever they do. But we want these skills to be timeless, things that will last into the future. So working with employers, business, corporate, alumni, and so forth, we develop these power skills: critical thinking, problem solving, interpersonal communication, literacy proficiency, and that's not just reading, but digital literacy, quantitative literacy, entrepreneurial spirit, and leadership. So we make certain that within the curriculum and our student learning outcomes, leadership is required of all of our students. We want you to lead in the way and spaces in which you lead. So making it a part of the curriculum is a way to ensure that all students, not just a subset of students, are exposed to what leadership means, what it entails, and what those actions warrant. Beyond the curriculum, those co-curricular and extracurricular activities, yes, we want you to be involved in professional organizations. So whether it's the SGA, Greek fraternity, sororities, organizations within your academic discipline, whatever the case may be, we want you to be involved in those spaces so you continue to learn those leadership skills and competencies. So it is very much a commitment in the curriculum and external to the curriculum that leadership is present in all that we do. Beyond that, and some of you have this handout, you'll find it in the electronic portfolio, also creating very designated and explicit leadership programs for students. And oftentimes we expect the chancellor to do this only, but this is where the campus community comes into play. So one of the things that I created as the provost and then as interim chancellor, a leadership academy for students. So the Provost Leadership Academy, which then became the Chancellor's Leadership Academy, asking students to participate, selecting those students. But even those type of programs, we're only selecting 10 to 15 students. We've got a campus of 5,000. So now we look to the deans. Deans, we need for you to create a Dean's Leadership Academy. Department chairs, we need for you to create a leadership initiative. Student affairs, finance and administration, the police department. It's an institutional commitment so that we can touch as many students as we possibly can external to the curriculum, so people are being immersed not only in leadership principles, but they're also being surrounded by leaders on our campus and in the community, our alumni, so that they're hearing, seeing, and experiencing what leadership looks like, how leadership functions. Those are the types of things that we do and must do to ensure that leadership becomes an institutional way and part of the culture each and every day. Hopefully that answers your question.
We do just want to remind everybody that we are live streaming, so when communicating and asking questions, make sure to speak clearly and precisely into the microphone, so not only the people in here can hear you, but over 200, almost 200 people are also listening and watching. I'm going to ask a question from the chat, and my questions will be from the chat. I'll ask my question later. Although we are an 1890 land-grant institution, this is coming from Nina Lina Bennett. No clue, many have no clue what that means. What strategies do you suggest for including the lesson of the 1890 land-grant mission into the current curriculum?
That's a great question, and thank you for the question. And it's not only about including in the curriculum, but it's also including in our conversations with other people. So not only must we ensure that our students, our faculty, and staff understand what a land grant is, But also we need to make certain that our alumni understand what a land grant is, what people in the community understand what a land grant is, individuals with whom we engage, corporate sector, business sector, so on and so forth. We have to educate people on what it means to be a land grant institution. I tell this to folks all the time. I worked at North Carolina A&T from August of 2000, and then around 2009, 2010, I had no idea what a land grant was. I'd been on that campus for a decade. I kept hearing people talk about we're land grant, we're land grant, we're land grant. I had no idea what it was. It wasn't until Harold Martin, who just retired as the chancellor, came, and he said to us as a campus community, you must understand what a land grant is, and you must understand, or you must share with others what the land grant is, and we must lean into that identity, because it's a built-in differentiator. It distinguishes us from others. So we've got to make certain that in communication, it's all of our jobs and responsibility to talk about the land grant mission, to talk about what it is, the pillars, if you will, of what a land grant is. So we've got to make certain that we are prophets, and we are singing this song at every opportunity that we have. So whether it's speaking to an audience, or engaging people in the classroom, or working in an extracurricular space, we always have to remind people we're a land grant institution, and this is what it means. Access, teaching, community development, research and extension. The benefit of a land grant institution. That becomes our communal job. And if we do it well, resources come to bear with it, because that built-in differentiator has us add economic impact in ways that other institutions can't.
Good afternoon, Dr. Graham. Kevin Sanders, Interim Chair, English Department.
Fantastic.
You talked about diversifying student population. What is your take on collaborating with the prison system?
Yeah, we had some conversation about this on our campus a couple of years ago, and unfortunately, people said, no, we're not going to do that. And I was disappointed in that, because the prison population, they are owed an education as well. And if there are opportunities for us to help educate and engage them so that we can address the issue of recidivism, then that's what we need to do. So I have no concerns with educating individuals from the prison population. Now, the question becomes, what does that mean? So you can say it in theory, now you've got to come up with a practical approach. I'm not certain how we perform here at Arkansas Pine Bluff, but at Winston-Salem State University, we do background checks. And that background check, depending on what type of offender you are, dictates whether or not you're able to enroll in the institution. We made some adjustments to that background check and who we would allow to enroll in the institution, but the safety of the campus is always going to be utmost of importance. So we've got to make certain that as we're thinking about that type of approach, that we're asking ourselves, what types of criminal offenses might warrant us not accepting students into the institution if we go down that path. So it's something that I'm always willing to entertain, but we've got to make certain as we think about entertaining, we're thinking about what are the broader implications. And we have to kind of think down the road. You know, we just can't think about the here and now. What does that mean 5 years, 10 years from now? And go in that direction. But I'm not opposed to it, but we've got to make certain that we're really thinking it through and coming up with processes, protocols to make certain that we keep the campus community safe.
Can I piggyback on
Yes.
that, sir? What about faculty going in to the prison system and increasing the numbers for recruitment efforts?
That's an approach that we can explore. Of course, this is going to be contingent upon faculty and the comfort level in doing so. I used to do that as a student athlete when I played at Carolina. We would go to the prison system and tutor some of the prisoners there. And that's something that influenced my thought process in this very issue. But again, it's about the safety of our students, the safety of our employees. So we've got to make certain that if we go in this direction, that we've had a conversation And we come up with strategies and approaches to ensure that we are keeping people safe. It's an excellent question. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Dr. Grant. Hazel Reed, retired Vice Chancellor for Research and Economic Development at North Carolina Central University.
Okay.
So I'm very familiar with the institutions that you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
And I'm very happy to hear you acknowledge the importance of the 1890 Land Grant Institution, because I would be remiss if I did not state that I'm a former Dean of Agriculture at this institution.
Yes, sir.
But I hear people talking about HBCUs, and what I would like for you to do is to compare and contrast 1890 HBCUs with the 19 with HBCUs, if you will.
Yeah, so the significant difference, the missions are the same by and large. We want to ensure access to higher education, quality teaching, all those things are true. What differentiates and separates the 1890 HBCUs is this notion of research, extension, and emphasis on agriculture and technical education. So there must be a commitment to ensure that we are investing in the research apparatus of the institution, that we're thinking through very strategic ways to ensure that we're extending the work of what we do here into the communities across the state, particularly in rural areas, working with farmers and so forth. It's that extension component, which comes with it an outreach component, which, if leveraged correctly, helps with retention of students today, helps with recruitment of new students, helps with the recruitment of potential donors and individuals who can give to the institution, and really drives social economic mobility, because individuals who come through the research and extension space, once they graduate, their skills, because they've been applying what they're learning along the way, they're day one ready for what they're doing post-graduation. They will have immediate return on investment with their degrees. That's what makes the 1890 a little bit different from the other HBCUs. And those HBCUs that understand that identity and then find ways curricularly and extracurricularly, co-curricularly, to connect what they do to the research extension identity of the institution, you see that they have higher return on investment. So that's the true differentiator. That's the thing that really separates us from others. But we have to, as the individual who asked the question earlier, we have to make certain that A, we are clear on what we are. I do this little thing at Winston-Salem State University. People think I'm crazy, but I'm a teacher. I told you I'm a teacher. I'll have a meeting with a group of people, and in a very random way, I'll stop in the middle of the meeting and say, what's our vision statement? What's our mission statement? You'd be surprised how many people work in an institution that have no idea what we're trying to achieve. How can you work here and not know who we are and what we're trying to achieve? So we got to make certain that people are clear on that 1890 identity and how it differentiates us from others, and then our investments have to ensure that we are lining up with that identity so that we can continue to serve as a distinguished 1890 land grant institution. Hopefully I answered your question. Thanks.
Hello, my name is David O'Peary. I'm currently a senior and I study nutrition and food science. And that leads me to my question. I did a research last summer in which I wanted to see the difference or the connection in between food insecurity and food empathy, especially on college campuses. And I did it at our local cafe, and it showed that we have, like, food insecurity is a big topic. And especially in colleges here, we have a big number of people that are food insecure. And it starts from the youth, but when you come to UAPB, if you are chosen, how will you tackle food insecurity?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first of all, it's an issue that's larger than UAPB. So we got to make certain that this is a communal conversation. The county, the city, everybody has to be in this space and having this discussion. So it starts there. And then we have to think about what it means. I was blown away. At Winston-Salem State University, Student Affairs reports to the provost. So not only was I responsible for academic issues, but I was also responsible for the oversight in collaboration with our Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Mel Johnson-Norwood, looking at issues in student affairs. And it shocked me when I found out how many of our students are homeless, how many of our students didn't have enough money for food on a daily basis. So working closely with Dr. Johnson Norwood, Dr. LaMonica Sloan-Wellhomey, Dr. John Capel, and partnering with organizations in the community, we began to figure out what can we do to ensure that our students not only have food, but clothing. So we created a food pantry on campus. We created a clothing closet on campus, no charge, in an indiscreet location, so you don't have to worry about feeling like you have a scarlet letter on your chest because you're going in to pick up some items that you might need. Working with Goodwill, working with Habitat for Humanity, these different organizations, to make certain that our students have what they need, because these things impact retention. I can't learn if I'm hungry. It's going to be difficult for me to learn if I don't have a place to lay my head at night. So these are real issues that we have addressed and continue to address in an ongoing way. I won't stand here and tell you that we're perfect. But I will tell you, we will not be part of the cold and timid souls who ain't doing anything to address the issue. We're doing the very best we can to try to address it and get ahead of it, but we got a lot more work to do. These are the types of things that we must do, but we must understand that we're not in this alone, and it is the obligation, as I see it, of this community to ensure that our students and individuals in this community are not facing food insecurities and food deserts.
Dr. Graham, we're going to go to some rapid fire questions and answers real quick. Let this gentleman go. Then we're going to go online to our online audience really quick.
Absolutely.
Answers fast, rapid fire. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Good day, on Instagram. I'm Desmond Holman, freshman class president. Given the challenges of low employment and student morale and extreme financial strain in university funding and employee salaries, what would be your immediate action plan for the first 100 days?
Wow. So you'll actually find in that portfolio my first 90 days of what I would be doing. A lot of what I would do, and I say this, I learned this from my fraternity brother, I would spend those first 90 days doing a lot of learning, listening. It's what I call the AG wants to see tour. I want to meet with people, I want to talk with people, I want to come to your spaces. You don't need to come to my office, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to move about the state, move about the county, move about the city. I need to know who the people are, I need to know what the issues are, I need for them to know who we are. I need for them to understand what it means to be in 1890. I need for them to know the successes that we're having. So it is about listening and learning on the campus, in the city, in the county, in the state. Because of course I would be a transplant to Arkansas. I'm from North Carolina. So I would have to learn as much as I possibly can. That would be a part of that 90-day or first 100-day plan. It is about rapport building, relationship building, listening and learning. So that's the nut and bolt of what the first 100 days would be for me. And that document will show you exactly some of the things that I would be doing. Phone calls, meetings with the mayor, city council members, county commissioners, so on and so forth. That's the type of work that I would be doing. I tell people all the time in this role, if you're spending more than 25% of your time in your office, you're doing it wrong. You gotta be out and engaged. Let me stop there because I want to get into the rapid fire.
All right, we're going to get a question from Jeremy Windsor off of Live here. His question is, there are many existing projects on campus, such as the completion of the soccer and track complex on campus. how do you envision seeing those projects come to completion and value to UAPB?
Thank you, Mr. Renner, for the question. So the first thing I would have to do is assess where we are with those projects. I would have to assess, what percent completion are we? Do we have the funding to complete those projects? It's my hope that we didn't start a project without having the funds to complete it. The other thing that we would have to figure out, because we want to complete those projects, but moving forward, we need to do two things. Make certain that our campus master plan speaks to the priorities and emphasis of the institution. It's about the students, student success, the student experience. Are those projects priority in what we're trying to do to ensure student success in those outcomes? And then the second thing we have to do is make certain that our financial resources line up with what we're trying to do. And if we don't have the resources internally, then we need to identify who are the individuals externally, whether individual donors, public-private partnerships, and so forth, so that we can ensure we have the funds before we start a project. We should and will never start a project without having all the money in the bank we need to complete it. I don't think anyone here would go buy a house if you don't have enough money to ensure that you can afford said house. At least I hope you would. Financial literacy 101. So that's the way I would approach those projects.
Darius Brown asks a question. What challenges do you foresee from a regional, political, and economic standpoint as it relates to the state of Arkansas versus your current residency in North Carolina?
That's a good question. So North Carolina, I tell people all the time, higher education is an interesting space, particularly when you're in the South. And the one thing that I've learned, most states follow what Texas, Florida, and North Carolina do. So in some ways, I'm coming here ahead of the curve. I know where this state is going. The things that are occurring right now have already occurred in the state of North Carolina. So I understand, I have the answers to the test. So having the answers to the test, now we have to get ahead of what's coming and make certain that we are developing relationships and having conversations with those influential people so that we can get ahead of the curve, anticipating what's coming. Institutional neutrality, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I can go on and on and on. So in some ways, it's a benefit because I'm coming from a state that has followed Texas and Florida, and I know what's coming next.
We'll do one more question and then we'll switch back to in-person. This also comes from Dr. Kristen Ellis. As Chancellor, how do you plan to evaluate and ensure that staff members are truly committed to a customer service-centered experience?
Thank you for the question, Dr. Ellis. So there are a couple of things. Number one, making certain that we have institutional guiding principles. So we have our core values as an institution. But what institutions of higher education generally don't do, we don't take, so we say we're a student-focused core value. Well, what does that mean? On a day-to-day basis, what does student focus look like? So how do we take that core value and now turn it into operational actions on a daily basis? If we say that we want to ensure that we have an environment that is predicated on excellence, well, what does that mean? What does it mean to be an excellent institution? So an example, so one of the things we've done is we've taken these core values and we've turned them into actionable items. So if you're going to be an excellent institution, that means you return phone calls in a 24 to 48 hour business period. That means that if you're supposed to be at work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, you're at work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. That's what excellent institutions look like. So we're real good about what I call word salad. We like throwing out a whole lot of words. It sounds good, student focus, integrity, excellence. But what does it look like in a pragmatic operational sense? It starts there. The expectation of, and then turning these things into actionable behaviors. And then integrating those into people's performance management plans and holding them accountable against what we say you're going to do in your role. And if you don't do it, then we have honest conversation with you about how you can improve upon it. And if there is no improvement, then you do what leaders must do. Thank you for your service, but we must go in a different direction. That's the tough part of the job, but that is a part of the job.
Good evening, Dr. Graham. I'm so glad you mentioned being student-focused because it made my question just a little bit easier.
Yes.
You, on your slides, spent a lot of time discussing student success
Yes.
from a faculty standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that because I am math faculty. I do appreciate that. But student success is holistic.
Absolutely.
So in 30 seconds or less, I would like to hear your elevator pitch for a holistic view of student success.
Mm-hmm. Student success is an institutional commitment, so everyone is part of student success. Whether you're the administrative assistant in an office, or you're in the library, or you're the chief of police, what you do on a daily basis impacts the environment that's created here. So if you are being rude to students, if you're inaccessible, if you're hard to find, if you're talking to students in a disparaging way, you are not contributing to student success. You're contributing to students leaving.
All right.
Hello, my name is Charles Boyd. I'm an agriculture engineering major. I'm from Chicago, Illinois. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Students often feel that decisions affecting them are made without their input. How do you ensure student voices are generally heard and considered in major university discussions and policies?
Absolutely. So part of what I do, and it goes beyond me, I spend a lot of time with students. You got to have conversations. First of all, I tell and I engage students and I let students know, we talk about student success, we act like it's everybody else's responsibility. You're the primary actors in student success. So if our first and second year retention rate is 65% and our 6-year graduation rate for male students 33%, we're going to put that in front of you and we're going to say, here's the issue. Now what can we do with you to ensure this isn't your reality? But that also means that we have to spend time with students beyond those meetings. So actually going to where the students are, going into the residence halls, coming after 5 o'clock, being here at 8 o'clock in the evening to see what your experiences are, being here at 11:30 in the evening, walking through the residence halls to see what your experiences are. We have to be uncomfortable so we can make you more comfortable.
I apologize, Dr. Graham. We can only take 4 more questions. We'll take these 2 here, then we'll take 2 from online. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Dr. Graham, I enjoyed your lecture. I'm Gene Hunt. I'm on the selection committee. Question, what is the largest number of reports that you have supervised in your career?
Yes, sir. So as the provost, I had 15 direct reports. As the interim chancellor, I had 8 direct reports. As the dean of the School of Education, I had 8 direct reports. Now, having said that, keep in mind that as chancellor and as provost, it's kind of cascading. So while I have 15 direct reports as provost, those people have reports and they all kind of report up to me as well. So as the chancellor and as the provost, you're overseeing a whole chunk. And as the chancellor, you're overseeing the entire campus. But in terms of direct reports, there's the 7 or 8 people that I have as the interim chancellor, 15 as the provost.
So you evaluated those 8 to 15 individuals?
Yes, sir. And then they were required to evaluate their people using a performance management plan model that we created, grounded in SMART goals. So everybody's clear on where we're going, and the individuals are clear on what their roles and responsibilities are.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Dr. Graham. My name is Glenn Freeman. I'm just an alumni who lives here in the community.
Not just an alumni, you're a proud alumni.
My question has to do with the community. We have 3 school districts in this community, and many of the students from those school districts end up as students at UAPB. Too many of them are having to go through remediation when they come in. I wanted to know if you had any experience with working with school districts in North Carolina, and what kind of programs would you be able to introduce to improve the readiness of these students for college?
Yes, sir. It's a great question. Yes, I have a lot of experience working with our school districts in the state of North Carolina. Governor Roy Cooper, who just rotated out as the governor, tapped me to be the chairperson of what he called the DRIVE Task Force, diversifying a representative and inclusive vision for education. So diversifying our teacher K-12 workforce grounded in principles of equity. That was my work from 2020 until just recently. So a lot of experience working in school districts. Former classroom teacher, this is what I do. So making certain that we are integrated into the community and into those schools. First of all, the teachers, the principals, the students, they have to see us. And we have to work with them to figure out what are the challenges and the needs within the district and within the schools. If we realize that there are challenges with, let's say, reading proficiency, how can we at Arkansas Pine Bluff support those schools by creating programs here so that our students have opportunities to read in the evening, on the weekends, and over the summer? Because the only way you become better as a reader is to read. You can't talk about reading, you actually have to engage in it, but there's a whole science to reading. So we have to ensure that we're putting in place programs, initiatives, and things of that nature to address these issues of reading, math, science acquisition, engaging in lab work, bringing alumni, bringing people from the community to work with these students, but working with the school district, working with the superintendents, working with the boards of education to ask what can we do to continue to support what you're doing in the schools, because we're all part of the same community. The other thing that, and this is something that I do and I required it, let's get out, and I'm big on reading, huge on reading. Let's get out and read to the students. Let's get out and read. Let's go to the schools. Let's sit down, elementary students, and let's read to them. That takes all of 15 minutes, but it is significant in their reading proficiency development. Read to them and have them read to you.
You have a question from Yvette White. You talked about diversifying the student population. Has he considered, or you considered, diversifying the learning program, the learning platforms, virtual, in-person, hybrid, to engage different students also?
It's a great question. So I have not considered it, and thank you, Yvette, for the question. I have not considered it because I don't know all of what exists here. So I believe we use Blackboard as our primary engine for our learning management system, but I would have to learn more about what we do. But at the core of the question is how are we diversifying what we do to address different audiences and groups of individuals. That's the work that we need to do as we think about enrollment growth at the institution and making certain that we are offering differentiated access to what we do here at Pine Bluff. So that's the work that we would need to engage in as we do an environmental scan and an audit of what we currently do as we think about where we want to go and what we can do.
I'm going to sneak in my question and then ask one more question.
Okay.
It was a question that I asked, and I want you all to hear how he answered this question. It was a question that I asked him when we met with him privately about our accreditation. As you know, we're currently in the process, in progress, of trying to get our accreditation back. Some institutions are infamous for certain things. You could say UAPB is infamous for trying to keep our nursing accreditation. So he's from Winston State University, right? 56% of those students go to that college for nursing. So they're doing something right when it comes to nursing. In the state, I also mentioned to him that we do have a powerhouse university, UCA. They're known for their nursing program and education program. As you stated earlier, though, it is critical for HBCUs like us to make sure that we are having that. So, as the Chancellor, if you are to be, what are your steps to help us keep that accreditation, get it, and keep it? Yes, we did receive $15 million for a building, but what's the purpose of that building if it was the next accreditation cycle is taken again?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm going to try to answer this as quickly as I can, Mr. Secretary. So I tell people all the time, first of all, I sit on the accreditation board in education. It's CAPE, the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Programs. I am an accreditation snob. I believe we should have more accredited programs, not fewer accredited programs. Accreditation means that peers in that discipline say that in your space, you are committed and engaged in continuous improvement, ensuring the significance, relevance, and timeliness of your degree program. Meaning, when your folk graduate, they can do that job on day one. If you're not accredited, then that may not be the case. So that's number one. Number two, accreditation means that there are standards that have been articulated by professionals in the discipline, and we are working against those standards to ensure that we have high quality. We should never lose an accreditation. We should never be scrambling to get ready for an accreditation, because accreditation is something we should be getting ready for all the time. If you're engaged in continuous improvement, you should be collecting data along the way, progress monitoring, to improve what it is you do, thinking about the resources you're investing within your program. So you shouldn't be scrambling to get ready for an accreditation in 2027. You should be ready right now. So we have to make certain that people are clear on what the standards are. As administration, we have to ensure that they have what they need to address those standards. And if we're not moving toward successfully achieving accreditation, then administration has to ask, why is that the case? And sometimes these conversations boil down to, I'm going to be honest with you all, and I told you part of my values, honesty, that H, I'm always going to be honest with you. Sometimes leadership is not leading. And that's what we have to address. So it is about knowing the standards, making sure people are educated on the standards, have the resources to meet the standards, working on a continual basis to progress monitor toward those standards, and then asking the question, do we have the right people in place? Not just the leaders, but sometimes maybe the people teaching might not be the right people, or maybe they're teaching the wrong things. So we have to move things, but you gotta ask the right questions. The data will tell us what we need to know. That's the key.
Give Dr. Graham a hand.
Thank each of you for your participation. We want to thank our online audience through YouTube for your participation as well. This has been a learning experience. It's not just historical, but we are learning for the last 2 days. I feel like we're kind of in a lecture to kind of reanalyze and assess who we are. You've given us a whole identity assignment, and so we thank you again. One more time, please show your appreciation to Dr. Anthony Graham. We want to remind you, each of you that are here in the audience and those of you online, to please turn in your survey. Please complete your survey, provide feedback. This is your opportunity to express your thoughts about Dr. Graham and even ask questions. You may not have had your question asked, or you may think of something afterwards. So please complete the survey. Earlier we received, I say it was a concert ticket. I teased Dr. Graham, said it looks like a concert ticket. But you can scan the QR code and access the survey in this manner as well. And also those of you that are staff here on the campus, you will receive an email. You probably have already received the email with the survey link available to you. So I do encourage you, because your feedback matters, please share your thoughts. And it's also on the screen. I think earlier I mentioned it was on the screen, but it may have been your QR code for your portfolio. But either way, we learn, and if we haven't figured out how to use a QR code, we're learning that too today. We want to remind you that on next Wednesday, the 26th of this month, you can join us for additional campus conversations. Next Wednesday, the 26th, we will hear from UAPB's own Carla Martin, attorney Carla Martin, who serves as an administrator in finance here at UAPB. That will be at 2 o'clock here at the STEM building. She's one of the 4 finalists. And then on next Friday, Dr. Robert Z. Carr Jr. Will be giving us a conversation, campus conversation, as the additional finalist. That's next Friday, the 28th, again at 2 o'clock here at the STEM building. Thank you again for your participation. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for those of you that joined us online, and we wish you safe travels, and please stay warm. Take care.
And team in this room, I apologize, but I got to get Dr. Graham to another meeting really quick.